Welcome back to Wizard Supercoach. This is a pretty late one, but it's still pre-midnight in WA, and you can't prove that I'm not there. So technically, I'm in before the daily deadline. Kind of feel like I'm back in uni saying that, and maybe if I put this much time and effort into that, I might be rich by now. But anyway, I'm gonna reset the subscriber goal to 300 by round zero now because, they've just kept rolling in, and I think I should make that 250 with a lot of time to spare. So you guys are amazing, and thanks for that. And for those who haven't hit subscribe yet, you know what to do. So today's video is going to preview Carlton for Supercoach if you haven't worked it out already. So like the Brisbane video, I'm going to give a disclaimer that I'm not a Blues fan and I'll probably get a few things wrong. I have tried to nail a best 22 this time at least without the question marks. So Carlton finished 8th last year, and I think they'll be somewhere around that mark again this year. They've got good top-end players on every line that we can see here, but there's also a pretty worrying lack of depth, I think. The best 22 is solid enough, but a few more injuries, like they've copped that season ended to Newman, but yeah, a few more, and I think they're probably cooked in terms of finals. And then if we look at the depth players there, they've got plenty of defenders, but there's not much else in reserve. So it seems a little bit odd to me, but I'm obviously no list manager. So there's two big questions here in terms of Supercoach that I have. The biggest is obviously whether Voss runs with a dual ruck setup. If he does, then TDK is essentially cooked as a pick, and I'll obviously cover that later. And then the other question, I think, is what will the CBA splits look like? So a bit like Brisbane last night, who's going to get that third spot? Is it going to be Chera or Hewitt, or could it even be someone else? I doubt it, but it's pretty hard to split those two right now. But yeah, I'll cover that later as well. I guess there's also the question of who takes Newman's role, as he's obviously gone for the season, as I said before. And he's already 32, so I hope that's not his career over, because he's pretty likeable player. So Doherty's moved to that half-back position in match sim now, and Ollie Hollands was already training there. So can those two coexist? Another thing that I'll talk about later, I guess. So let's start and have a look at what we know about the CBA situation currently. If you watch the CBA split video that I did, you'll see that Carlton had the 6th smallest CBA splits in 2024. They really like to use like that top 3 or 4 mids, but post-buy in particular, they really settled on the first 3 mids and used them even more as time went on. It's hard to predict who becomes mid 3, as I said before, so I guess we'll try and work it out, but it's pretty hard to know at this time of year. So Chera was in and out with injury, and he was clearly underdone when he did play. If we look back at 2023, he was in career best form then, and he and Hewitt were essentially even for CBAs that year. So I think it's likely that they'll continue something similar in 2025. It'll probably come down to the mix required for any given matchup. Cripps and Hewitt CBAs, they increase during losses, and Walsh and Chera decrease in losses. I'm guessing that's because Hewitt is that fully defensive mid, so Voss probably throws him in there to help stem the bleeding when things aren't going right. And then Cripps, obviously, he's their best player. According to the umpires, he's the best player of, well, ever, really. And so it's obvious why he gets thrown in there. The other interesting part here is that they've lost their 5th and 6th mids from the club in Kennedy and Carroll. So that obviously leaves some really good opportunity for hopefully guys like Jagger Smith, because we want him to get in there and score well. If you've been watching these videos as well, you know that I don't really cover the draftees in depth, as I don't have enough time to research them to the level that I'd feel comfortable presenting the info on. But yeah, I think it's a very safe assumption that he'll become the 5th man, so lock him in your team. The number 6 spot, though, I think this is a complete mystery. I've got no idea, if I'm honest. I'm sorry if my voice is starting to crap out a bit too. Like it is pretty late. I've had a big day, and I don't know how many videos this is in a row, but yeah, my voice just, it's not there tonight. So I know that they've used Doherty in the middle at times in the past, but given that he's training with the backs again, I think there's no guarantee. If I had to guess, I'd say that 6th spot is probably going to be a split between Elijah Hollins and Fogarty, or Fogarty, or however you say it. I don't understand how it can be the same spelling. Like, I think the commentators say Fogarty, but it's Fogarty for the Crows. Anyway, the smoky here would be Cooper Lord. He played 2 games late last year, and he had 38 and 65% CBAs, and he scored 69 and 88 in those games. So it's a bit of a pity that he's priced at 253k, because if he got games at the start, like, he could have been a really good rookie this year. But yeah, it's a bit more awkwardly priced at 253. So yeah, just I guess in summary for the CBAs, it's a complete mystery, like most teams are. But yeah, I don't know. Like the top is pretty certain here, but yeah, the last few spots, I don't know. I look at the kick-ins, not that it seems terribly Supercoach relevant, I guess. It's quite the spread if you have a look, more than the first 2 teams that I've done. And none of them really are Supercoach picks. Like Newman might have been, but he's gone, or gone for the season anyway. At first I thought Doherty, he might be a chance to get a decent amount, but when I checked, historically he doesn't actually take many kick-ins, which shocked me. Maybe Ollie Hollins could get in on the act. I don't know, owners will be hoping so, but there's no guarantee again. So I guess now's a good time to have a bit of a closer look at him. So this half back role that he looks set to play, obviously it's usually a pretty good one or very good one for Supercoach scoring, but we've also got very little info to make a choice with, which it's not great, but we'll make do. So given that he is like 333k, we want to be quite sure, I think, that he's going to make the 89 average that he needs to make that 150k and be a good pick. And again, yes, I still deal with 150k. So the 2 seasons that we do have here, or that he's played them almost exclusively on the wing. So we know that's not the best place to score, so that explains like those pretty low averages. But according to his heat maps from round 20 onwards last year, he started playing some half back, and it increased his average in that time up to 83. So he still needs about 5 more points on top of that to make the required amount this year. But I reckon with a full preseason training in that position, then it seems a pretty good chance to happen. Another good sign is that Newman still played the other halfback flank in those games. So it suggests that he should be able to coexist with another halfback like Doherty or whoever it is, I guess. But yeah, he can do it. So they're really good signs. I guess looking at the numbers here, there's not really too much to see, given that it's wing numbers and there's only, the 2 seasons here. But yeah, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this. His post-buy, though, you can see that it jumped here, and that's explained completely by those half-back games in the final month. Because his post-buy average, if you take those those half-back games away, it was pretty much the same. I think it was like 54 point something or 56 or something like that. So, yeah, the half-back explains that. His points per disposal, they do look really good, so there's another good sign. That suggests that he's not going to need like 40 touches to ton or anything like that, so big tick there. His points per minute, though, at first glance, it's a worry, but obviously that's based on the majority of those games being on the wing, so I can't actually check it, but I probably could, but I didn't. Those final 4 games, they'd obviously have something far more respectable here for points per minute. And unfortunately, his TOG's already pretty standard, so there's not much room to grow there. But yeah, if you've been watching my vids, you'd know that the thing I normally look for is high points per minute and low tog. It's a really good indicator, I think, for, meat on the bone. So basically, I think that as a pick, it's completely role dependent here. So there is data, albeit it's a small sample size, but it suggests that he will have what it takes to hit that required average, I think. I highly doubt he becomes a keeper from here, but that's fine. Like, he's currently only in 2% of teams as well, so he could be a great pod, especially to start with. I've messed around with him in some teams that I've made, and I think ultimately it might come down to him or Peatling for me in the middle. I think both are good picks, and I certainly can't rule Hollands out of my team come round one. And to be honest, I wasn't aware of those final 4 games until I did the research for this, so it's really got me thinking now. But anyway, I'll move on. So the man that I mentioned before, the guy likely to be on the other flank, Sam Doherty. So all his numbers here are going to be from 2023 because he missed 2024. I mean, he played the first game, but he didn't play much of it, so he essentially missed the season. So there's no doubt, like you can see here, that he's been a great player for a long time, and his averages go further back than that, but I only really do the last 5 years for these. The first thing that stands out to me here is his lack of durability. So we can see it's rare that he plays a full season, and at his price, you're picking him as a keeper, so it's not ideal as a keeper to be missing games, because you want to be like, you're looking at total points and stuff. So there's that, and I guess after coming back from his 3rd ACL, and it's the same question that I asked about Duday last video, is he even going to be the same player? Like, we've seen players come back in the past and they're just not the same, and I'm assuming if that's going to be the case, it would be after 3 of them. So who knows? There's not a huge difference here in his wins and losses, but again, like Duday, he's one of the few relevant Supercoach defenders who actually scores better in losses. The post-buy as well, he started to spend some more time in the middle, second half of 2023. So does that potentially happen this year? Is he gonna play that half back and like roll into the middle and take that 5th or 6th spot that I mentioned before? That it could be really good for him actually. Points per disposal, it's not at the 4-point threshold there that I look for, but that's just me, and it's not too bad. 3.9, that's all right. He should find plenty of the ball in this role anyway. He's proven it before, so it doesn't really matter to him. Points per minute and the tog, it all looks good here. It's exactly what you'd expect from like a player of his quality and experience. So yeah, on the numbers front, like there's not a hell of a lot to see here that's going to tell us too much. Like, we know what we're potentially up for with Doherty. I mentioned obviously before that Ollie Hollands he already showed signs that he can coexist with another half back, but we've also got plenty of data to suggest that Doherty can do it too. So in his peak years, he always had Sard, Newman, Simpson, a few others, and he had to contend with them getting ball, and he scored fine. Like, he had some of his peak years then, so yeah, it's a good sign for both of them. So there isn't much to say here, to be honest. Like, despite his Supercoach pedigree, his durability issues, I don't think they can be ignored, and I doubt they're going to get better now that he's 31. So if he was 100k cheaper, I'd pick him almost certainly, because it's much less of a risk. But at this price, I think the risk is just way too high for me. So we'll look at some midfielders now, and there is a few of them. 3 votes, Patrick Cripps. This poor guy, he's going to cop shit forever now because of the umpires, just because they had no idea what the hell they were doing. Cripps knows what he's doing, and that's scoring Supercoach points. So when he's fully fit, we can see that he's that 110 type player. It's meant, if you can catch him at the right price over the years, he's been a really useful pick. His durability looks quite good here, just by the numbers, but it's a little misleading because he does have a tendency to play through restrictive injuries like back problems and stuff like that. And we can kind of see it in his scoring. Like, yeah, if he carries it, his scoring can drop a lot, and it makes him obviously not a good pick when he does that. But yeah, by all reports, he's fully fit at the moment, so yeah, that's good. Like most midfielders, he scores better in wins, but his loss average is still decent here, so that's fine. His post by scoring increased by 10 points, and that's because his CBAs rose by 11% in the final 8 rounds. As I said before, like Voss settled on that trio, and they got all the CBAs. So, as we can see, like with his CBA brackets down here, he is a classic case of just more CBAs equals more points. It climbs progressively. So he does have a lower points per disposal rate here. I guess it makes him vulnerable to quite low floor scores if he's getting tagged and can't rack up like these big possession tallies. But he usually finds enough of the ball, I think, so it's not a huge issue. Points per minute and TOG is standard for elite mid, so there's nothing really to see there. But looking at his CBAs, like I mentioned before, that he scores better with more CBAs. The only issue here is that I can't see him reaching that 90% mark very often or at all. Like he only got it twice last year. And then in 2023, he didn't get above 90% once. So I guess the good sign though is that even if like Chera gets fully fit and he gets more CBAs, it's likely or very likely not going to be Cripps who loses any of them to accommodate him. So given he averaged 79% in 2023 with Chera, and then 79% again in 2024, mostly without him, like, it's a good sign. Yeah, he's not going to lose CBAs for Chera. Plus, he's still up around this 110 average here, we see. So, even if he does drop like to the 60, 69, he's still around that mark. It's fine. So, as I mentioned earlier, his CBAs, they increased by 4% in losses. So, Carlton could very easily win less games this year. Like, it's entirely possible, especially with a couple of injuries. So, yeah, that could actually be, I wouldn't say good for him, but it would get him up into this bracket though. So I guess that doesn't really offset this, unfortunately. Anyway, it's a pretty safe assumption that he's going to be the top dog in the middle. So if he can stay fit, I think we can expect to see just more of the same, like that 110 type average. So I've seen nothing so far to suggest that he's not fit this preseason. So yeah, I think that 110 average looks pretty likely. It's similar to Dunkley that I mentioned in last night's video. Like I really do see the appeal in those kind of players that are just safe and consistent now. Like there's no value here unless he enters that higher CBA bracket, which is unlikely, or Carlton start contending for the flag, which would push this up. Like it'd push his average up because of this, but yeah, he's just that safe pick. Like there's no value, but yeah, it's just safety. So not a bad pick, but he's not one that I'm looking at right now. If they are going to contend for that flag though, they're definitely going to need this guy fit and firing. So that's unfortunately not likely, given that he's already copped a hamstring injury a couple of weeks ago and he's still not back in full training. I think that put him out 4 weeks or something. So he is similar to Cripps in that he plays through restrictive injuries sometimes. Missing the 14 games in the past 3 seasons probably doesn't look that bad, but once you take into account why he's missed them, I think it's a big red flag. So those back issues in all those seasons, like all 3, and now another hamstring injury this preseason. So I'm obviously no doctor, but it's pretty well known in footy circles, I think, like of any level, that back issues cause hamstring injuries. So yeah, it's not good, but another way of looking at it is it's pretty amazing that he's managed to score pretty damn well in this time, considering these issues. So it's just a question of how long can that last if he just keeps getting injured. So again, you'd only be picking him as a primo. like I said, with Doherty, and you don't want Primo's missing 4 to 5 games a season if you're playing for overall rank. It's just going to lose your total points. But yeah, he scores better in wins like most mids, and he's going to need Carlton to improve. But yeah, his differential is pretty small here, so that's all right. Now, I'm not sure what caused his slight scoring decline post-bye last year. His role in his CBAs didn't really change. I would just guess that he was fatigued and ran out of steam, given that he missed most of the preseason with that back injury and missed the start of the season. So he also missed the 2023 preseason and the start of that season for the same reason. So it's a big worry. There's more red flags here. But again, is it crazy that he still manages to score like this under those circumstances? I don't know. So points per disposal lets him down a little, 3.8. And the other thing that's not listed here is his disposal efficiency. He can be pretty erratic. Yeah, this would, if he gets tagged, this would make him, pretty vulnerable to those really bad floor games. But I don't think it's going to happen because Cripps is generally the one that gets tagged. So I don't think there's much of an issue there. Nothing to write home about here. He should continue, I think, to get the CBAs in this sweet spot bracket right here. So that's good for anyone that is going to pick him. I'm sure there's some people. He does tend to get this little bit less though in losses, so that would actually, if he went at this year's CBAs like percentage, that would actually drop him down a bracket. So he'd end up down here somewhere. So yeah, that's not so good. So basically, I think this is another pick that I can't really get behind just because of the durability issues. So while they're not the worst going around, but they are ongoing. And at this price, as I said, we just can't have that as a keeper. So I know some people, they don't factor durability in as much as others, and that's fine too, but I just want a full season out of who I pay top dollar for, and with him, you are paying top dollar, I think. So we'll take a break from the mids for a sec and have a look at TDK. So this one, straight up, this is massively high risk and high reward, I think. He's potentially hugely underpriced, but the elephant in the room is it's Pitney or Pitnet or however you say it, and we'll just call him Pitto, and whether TDK is going to be a solo ruck. So the reason we're all looking at him is because he went 144 average between rounds 11 and 17 last year. But when he's not solo, it's a completely different story. So I'll look at the other stuff now anyway. So his durability, it's not perfect, but it shouldn't be enough to put anyone off picking him, I think. The win and loss average is clearly vastly different, but this is almost certainly, I think, because Carlton played far better with TDK solo. So if we can all see this, then let's just hope that Michael Voss can see it too and just put a line through Pitto. The post-buy result here, it's because of the final 2 games of his insane run. Well, he only had 2 games after that before he got injured. So yeah, he missed the rest of the regular season. So it's a little bit skewed, I guess, but it's all right. He kind of had that crazy run either side of the bye. I should also mention as well, that crazy run, it included some less than elite opposition rucks, but one good sign is it did include Wits, and he's usually pretty hard to score on. So yeah, maybe he's not like a flat track bully. I don't know. The points per disposal is great, but I suspect that all rucks are probably going to be pretty high, given that they get a lot of points from their hitouts, more so than disposals. I haven't done that video yet, but I will get around to it soon, because I think there is going to be days are coming up, especially where I won't have time to do these previews, because they are quite bloody time consuming. There's definitely meat on the bone with this Tog. Like most solo rucks are going at about mid 80s. So yeah, it's quite scary actually. Imagine if he did go solo and suddenly you put 10% Tog on or something like that. So another video that I haven't done yet that is also coming soon will be the CBA sweet spot for rucks. But instead what I've included here is just what he averages when he goes above and below his average CBA percentage. So his average is 60. So we can see here again, like above 60% CBAs, he's an animal. If he goes below 60, yeah, he's not an animal. So this here could be an indicator of whether a ruck can still score with a second ruck or at least a small drop in CBAs. And of all the relevant rucks that I did this for, TDK was by far the least able to have any drop in CBAs at all. Over here as well, I think, again, like the drop in the CBAs, it's completely tied to what I mentioned earlier with Carlton playing far better when he's solo. So obviously they just win more. Admittedly, I recently took him out of my team. I think that was in the last team update video that I did, but I can't remember. I still haven't put him back, although it's tempting. I'm still highly interested in him, but it's just more gut feel than anything right now. So there's a lot of risks here, and I don't fully trust Michael Voss. So a perfect example of that is when he decided to play Pitnet with TDK in round 18, which is what ended his crazy scoring run. And then Pitnet recently told Channel 7 that he was planning to play in a dual ruck setup. So is he just being hopeful for his own interests? Like, I hope so, but I don't know. Even just hearing that is like, sends shivers down your spine, I guess, if you are an owner. So I don't know. I don't know with him. It's just, as I said at the very start, it's massively high risk and high reward. I will say this though, with him still out of my side, yeah, he's 35% owned, so he's actually not a bad antipod if you do think that he might blow up a bit and, yeah, be a bust. It's entirely possible, but yeah, I still don't know, actually. He could just as easily end up in my team. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what way you're thinking. So we'll go back to the mids now, and there's 2 to go, and obviously this one is Chera. So straight away, his injury issues stand out, but he's made that magical trip to Qatar. I don't know what's in the water over there, but yeah, it's meant to be pretty special. And so far, he's having a good pre-season by all reports. So it's basically all soft tissues here, though. And unlike ego, it's certainly a very dirty word. So first big red flag for me right there. I look at the averages here as well, and regardless of the injury, I can't help but shake the feeling that like 2023 here was a bit of an outlier, and his true average is probably more that 90 to 100 mark. I could be wrong. It's also entirely possible that he properly broke out in 2023 and that he would have continued that if it wasn't for getting injured in 24. So I don't know, who knows for sure, but he can still score, and he can score bloody fast as well. So it needs to be noted, I think, that in round 9 and 16 last year, he only played half the game, but he still scored 75 and 102 in those games. So he was on the way to some absolutely massive scores there. Now, like all these fellow mids that we've covered, his win average is obviously, it's better than the loss average, but if you look at 2023, it's actually reversed. He's about 10 points better off in the losses. So that's an interesting one there. His average dropped off post-bye because his CBA's dropped off dramatically. So Voss really, as I said, he settled on Cripps, Walsh and Hewitt as that trio heading into the finals. And then, of course, Chera ended up like injured anyway. This is a really good points per disposal, I think, for a midfielder. So it's definitely towards the top for the relevant mids, or like Supercoach relevant mids, and given that he's averaged 25, 23, and 23 disposals in the past 3 seasons, I think it's a good sign. Like, if he can keep this up and return back to like 24, 25 disposals, like that's a good scoring jump. This is all pretty decent here, but the really low tog, that's another good sign. If he gets that up and keeps this up, or even improves it a little bit, like, yeah, we're looking at primo numbers there. I guess unfortunately for the CBA sweet spot data here, there's just not a lot to go on from last year, but in 2023 he averaged 115. Like that was his most, and that was when he was in this bracket here as well for last year. So, for 2023. So we got about 2 years worth of data here, and this is his best bracket. So it's, safe to say that's his sweet spot. But he's never averaged higher than 57% CBAs in a season for Carlton. So, like, he's not getting there consistently enough. I'd never say never, but yeah. Even if he like falls down to here, and you think that 2023 was like the true Adam Chera, well, he still got 109 in this bracket for that year, so it's still good enough for what you need. That would still make him like an M8 or whatever. So as I did mention before, he loses CBAs in losses, but it's not really enough here to make a difference at all, I think. So basically with him, he's just another pick where I can't get past the durability issues, and more so it's the soft tissue type that they are. He's been in my team at times. I think the first team I posted, he might have been in it, but he hasn't ever stayed in there for long. So no doubt, like, he's got the potential to score big, and he's got the potential to score the required amount, but the doubt is all on the CBA situation, I think, and the biggest part, obviously, whether he can stay fit, and that's just such a theme, I think, with all these Supercoach picks. Like, the durability either like rules him in or out in the end. So I'm still not completely opposed to this pick, though, I got to say. So lastly, I'm going to cover George Hewitt, and you're probably wondering why, but I've seen people talk about him as a potential pick, and so he's made the list. As I always say, like, leave no stone unturned in preseason research, because you got the time to do it once the season starts. You're kind of under the pump. So the first question I want to ask is: has anyone ever reviewed the medical and fitness staff at Carlton? Because I'm seeing a trend here. There's another one with poor durability and back problems again. That's 3 of these players have had like multiple season back problems. So I guess, though, to be fair to Hewitt, like, apart from the back thing, at least there's no soft tissue injuries here in the last 5 years. Yeah, like the corky in the hand being stood on, that could have happened to anyone. So I guess at first glance, like, it looks like his scoring history is a bit up and down, but there's a pretty easy explanation to why, and I'll get to that later. But also keep in mind that he was sub and injury affected in 23 and 24 when he's had this scoring drop, and his adjusted averages were 92 and 100 respectively. So that sounds a lot more like in line. I think 92 here and 100 here. So again, like most of the mids, he scores better in the wins, but if you watch the midfield wins versus losses video, you'll see that he's got one of the smallest differentials. He also tackles a lot, which is it's good for that, and like a good scoring base, I think. I'll mention that again later, something to do with that. But his score increased post bye. It's the same thing that I said before about Voss settling on those 3, and his CBA is increasing. This is a little bit low here, and surprisingly low for Hewitt. Like, I thought his tackling would boost his points per disposal up a bit, just because he'd need less disposals because he's getting the tackle points. But it's probably a little bit more of a worry than the other players that are around this mark for that reason. Because if you took the tackles away, then it's going to be even lower. But anyway, This is all really good. Like the points per minute is what you want to see from an inside mid. And he's another one who's got like the good upside here. I think with the TOG, it's still quite low. So when I say I always look for low TOG and high points per minute, this is delicious. But that's not the problem with him. So the CBA part, this is easily the most important thing with Hewitt. So remember just before I said that there's an easy explanation for his like somewhat erratic scoring over the years. Well, he's the absolute epitome of more CBAs equal more scoring. So it's so tightly correlated that if we look at his sweet spot brackets here, you'll see that with every 10% CBA increase, his average rises like 10 points roughly. So this is why in 2022, he managed to average the 111 because he had 73% CBAs on average. So for some reason, they dropped to 59% in 2023. And so did his score, as we can see. So then 2024, it went back up by 9%, so to 68%. And his adjusted average rise by 8 points. So you can see how tightly correlated it is. Like, do you get the picture with him? Like it's all CBAs. So I think that CBA split uncertainty at the Blues in 2025, that kind of kills him as a pick for me. So if Voss came out tomorrow and somehow gave us an indication that Hewitt would be getting 80% plus CBAs, and I don't know why he would, but let's just say for the hypothetical, then I'll be picking him regardless of his durability worries here. Because even if he did get injured eventually, like he would just score like a madman for his price in the time that you had him. And then you just trade him when he gets injured. But in the real world, I'm not picking him. So that's about all I got time for. I'm dead tired. It's very late at night, and I did make the deadline though on a technicality. I'm running with that, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about these players, and yeah, thanks again for your support and stuff as always. On that note, I'm wrecked. My voice it's given out, so I'm going to bed. Catch us all in the next video.